Hi, this is Swapnil Bhartiya and we are here at KubeCon China in Shanghai, and today we have with us Jiten Vaidya from PlanetScale. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about PlanetScale.
So PlanetScale is a company that me and my co-founder Sugu Sukumaran started about a year ago because we realized that there are a lot of companies who wanted help using Vitess, which is the open source project that we're going to talk about today. And so PlanetScale provides support for Vitess. PlanetScale also provides professional services for people who are trying to migrate to Vitess. And we are also building a database as a service on top of Vitess.
Before we go to Vitess, let's talk about PlanetScale itself. Why and when did you create the company?
So we created the company. The idea of the company has been something that Sugu and I have been talking for a couple of years now. But we decided that the time was right because Vitess started seeing a lot of traction outside of YouTube. A lot of people started using it, they were discovering it, they were finding it useful, and they needed help. And so we thought that this was the right time for us to do it.
So we have talked about you, we have talked about PlanetScale. Let's start out with Vitess now. So it started at YouTube, right?
Correct.
So tell us quickly, what was the reason it was created and how it became an open source project?
My co-founder Sugu Sukumaran and another senior engineer at YouTube, he was actually, I think, engineer number one at YouTube, Mike Solomon, started looking at the various problems that we were having scaling MySQL databases. I think at that time we had already sharded MySQL in-app, but that was not enough. YouTube was growing very quickly. And so they sat down with the list of problems that they had observed, took themselves out of the day-to-day firefighting, and came up with a list of design principles that they thought they could build something to get ahead of the curve for the MySQL scaling that was happening. The first problem that they wanted to solve was connection pooling, and that's how Vitess was born. Now, they had seen these problems in earlier companies before, and they knew that they were going to see these problems at other companies. So they thought that it made sense for this to be open source. And so right from the beginning, Vitess pretty much has been open source.
When companies open source project, do they open source out of altruism to help other, or it's also the reason is that the product is critical to them, but at the same time there are other users who may benefit, but they will also contribute. So instead of you putting all the energy, you create a technical debt.
Correct.
You build a. So which was the reason here?
Correct. So I think here the reason was more about the recognition that the problems that they wanted to solve were not YouTube specific problems, but scaling specific problems. And if they built something that solved them, any company that was facing these problems could use it. In the beginning, there was no expectation that a community would grow around it, but it did grow. And I mean, both Mike and Sugu followed this discipline that all the changes that they made were to the open source, and then they imported it into YouTube, and then they deployed it at YouTube. And I think that discipline really paid off when Flipkart discovered us in 2015, and they were the first ones who started using it outside of YouTube. And it has become more and more popular since then.
So you're telling me that project was kind of established outside of YouTube, and then YouTube was like this?
That's not true. I mean, it was started at YouTube, but instead of
the way you develop it
we developed it
as a upstream project, which you'll
correct as a public into the public repository,
right?
And then we would import it into YouTube,
right?
And because it was built as an open source project that needed to run in Google data centers, a lot of things were designed and architected in such a way behind interfaces, so that, for example, the log server that Google uses is internal log server, is chubby. Because we put it behind interfaces, we could support Zookeeper, etcd, and Console outside of Google YouTube data centers.
Perfect. And you said that soon the community started growing.
Correct.
So how did you kind of build the community around it? First of all, you said it was open source on GitHub already.
It was really difficult for people initially to discover Vitess, but Sugu started going and talking at database conferences as well as the Golang conferences, because this was one of the first projects to be developed in Golang and which was deployed at scale of YouTube. And so people started hearing about it through that, and then they started discovering it, and then they started approaching us for help. So there has been a very popular public Slack channel that has mostly been tended to by Sugu and other folks at YouTube who used to work on it. So I think Mike stopped working on Vitess sometime around 2014 or thereabouts. But there is a team at YouTube that worked on Vitess, and Alain Robart and others. And they have been a very good stewards of Vitess, and really a helpful community around Vitess on Slack.
And as this community grew, then you also decided to give the project to CNCF as well.
Correct.
So first of all, why CNCF? Why you made a decision to give it to a foundation instead of developing, as an independent project?
Correct. So we were talking to Joe Beda and Craig McCluskey, who used to be engineers at Google and who left to start a company around Kubernetes. And Kubernetes was donated by Google to CNCF. And they advised us that it might make sense for YouTube to give the stewardship of Vitess to CNCF. And so Sugu initiated that process inside YouTube, and that's how it sort of came about. It made sense to us that this was a mechanism that was sort of Google was familiar with, comfortable with, and because a lot of companies outside of Google YouTube were using it for mission critical uses, it sort of made sense for the health of the project for it to be owned by an independent foundation rather than one specific company.
Now you have graduated to CNCF.
Correct.
And, which also means that now you have some really big users as well.
Correct.
Tell us about some of the big users of Vitess.
Correct. So I think one of the biggest users that we have in the United States is Slack. So Slack themselves, I think about 20% of their production traffic today runs on Vitess. Square also uses Vitess. Many other US companies use Vitess. I mean, I think GitHub.com is about to go in production. I don't know whether they have gone in production. Booking.com is another European company. But one of the biggest users of Vitess, especially on Kubernetes, is JD.com. And I think they have a very large number of databases and database clusters that they manage using Vitess. And they have also been contributing a lot of patches and a lot of enhancements to upstream Vitess. So we are very hopeful about adoption of Vitess in China.
Do you work with them, or
an organization like JD, which has deep engineering support, deep engineering expertise, does not need us for day-to-day operational support? But we are hoping that we can have a relationship with them where we jointly work towards supporting Vitess. And also, we want to be, and we are currently pretty much the experts in the Vitess code base. So we might be able to give them some help about deep engineering needs of theirs from PlanetScale.
Why they chose Vitess?
I think there are three main reasons why people like to use Vitess. Mm-hmm. First is humongous scale and horizontal scalability. Mm-hmm. So basically, relational databases do not scale, by default horizontally, mm-hmm. the way NoSQL databases like Mongo do. But Vitess is sharding middleware. It mm-hmm. sits between your application and your MySQL databases, and it allows you to scale your databases horizontally. Mm-hmm. I think that was one of the reasons they used it. The second thing that people like to use Vitess is that when it moved to Google's orchestration software called Borg, which was the precursor to Kubernetes, a lot of features that a distributed system needs, especially a stateful distributed system needs to run well in a cloud environment, were built into Vitess. It has excellent observability. It has an excellent service discovery story. It has an excellent master reparent story. So I think all of these reasons, JD decided to use it because they also are a big Kubernetes shop.
Are they just consumer, or they're also contributing back?
They're also contributing back. They have been they have been excellent contributors, basically. They have fixed a whole bunch of bugs. They have extended the MySQL grammar that Vitess supports. They have also done a fair bit of performance related bug fixes. So yeah, they have been very active. They have been contributing back.
And then you look at the contribution coming from Asia, China versus contribution coming from either US or Europe.
Yeah.
Do you see any difference there?
Not really. I think the quality of engineers here is really high. I mean, all of the people who are contributing back, they are really strong engineering teams. Slack, for example. I mean, Slack has a 4-people engineering team dedicated to Vitess, and their contributions have been fantastic. So have been the contributions from Square. So have been contributions from many smaller companies. But I mean, Jitens.com is comparable to any of the US companies, I would say.
So, so this is first KubeCon here in China, Shanghai.
Correct.
What has been your experience so far?
I really love the energy here. I mean, I think Shanghai is a fantastic city. The reception that was on the Bund last evening just blew my mind, looking at the river and looking at all the lights on all the buildings. And I see the same energy here in KubeCon. I think it's great.
And being a first, KubeCon, they have 2,500 plus people. That's incredible.
It is very incredible. Yeah, I wasn't expecting such crowds here. Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap this interview, let's talk about you for a while.
Okay.
What do you do in your free time when you're not fixing YouTube and help?
I love to cook.
Really?
Cook. I love to make cocktails.
Okay.
I'm always trying out various martini recipes. I also like to read a lot. I read a whole bunch of science fiction. I also like to go hiking. So that's what I do mostly I also have 2 kids. So kids always take time.
What kind of cooking do you do?
I mostly like to cook Indian food, but from all regions of India.
What is your favorite, or what is the latest dish that you have learned recently?
The latest dish that I have been experimenting with is a Malwani fish curry. So Malwan is a coastal region of India, as you know, and they have a lot of sort of coconut-based and seafood-based recipes. So I've been trying it out with salmon and with scallops and all kinds of seafood that you get in the United States, but with the flavors from Malwan. Yeah.
But the bigger question is that, have you been to that region? So you have actually tasted it, or you are just sitting here and looking at internet and like?
So I used to do, again, as I said, I like to hike.
Right.
And so I have done a lot of hiking in the Konkan region of Maharashtra. And that's where this cuisine comes from. So yes, I have tasted it myself.
Yeah, because sometimes, when you look at recipe online,
correct,
you don't actually know how it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And once you have tasted something, you just change little composition and the taste change, because I love to cook too.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
yeah.
So it's incredible. Thanks, Jiten, for talking to me today, and hopefully we'll see you again at the next KubeCon or other open source events.
Absolutely, you are very welcome. It was a pleasure of mine to talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.